Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link in the description below. Breaking news has come out today as the British Army will now be entering Ukraine in full force. According to a statement made by the British government, as well as the Ukrainians, the British Defense Secretary, Grant Shapps, has told The Telegraph that he has, quote-unquote, held talks with army leaders about shifting an official British-led training program into Ukraine. This is the first time ever that a NATO country is going to be entering the nation of Ukraine and conducting actual military operations of any kind. At the moment, it appears that the British will be entering non-combatant roles behind the lines, largely involved with logistics and training, like we just saw right there. But nevertheless, this is the first step by a NATO country to move their own armed forces into Ukraine beyond incredibly small contingents of special forces meant to keep embassy staff safe. This is a huge concern, especially considering that the international implications that this may have. The Russian Federation has been very adamant that NATO forces have been involved in Ukraine for some time, and of course those statements have been markedly untrue. Nevertheless, they act as though that if NATO forces are in Ukraine, that will be causing a major escalation to the war. And today we're hearing an official announcement that NATO forces will be inside of Ukraine through the British Army. We don't really know what this means as far as a Russian response at the moment. Going off of what they've been saying, they should be raining down a nuclear hellfire here within the next few hours. In reality, they probably would start to directly provoke the West in the Baltic regions, or maybe even down towards the Georgian area, although Georgia is not a part of NATO. They may even try and escalate with the Finns and the Norwegians, which are also both NATO members. We don't really know for certain what the Russian response to the British entering Ukraine will really be at the moment, but this is one of the first times that we've ever seen a major move being made by a NATO country in terms of the military in Ukraine. And I got to give a massive credit to the British for this as well, because to see that they are moving actual armed forces into Ukraine, even if they aren't entering the front lines and they're just conducting training behind the lines for the Ukrainian armed forces, that is more armed involvement as far as the armed forces are concerned than any other nation has undergone at the moment inside of Ukraine. A huge credit to the British, a huge credit to NATO, and of course showing that the Russians will not win in the end, as NATO will continue to support Ukraine, even if it means ramping up the pressure on the Russians. Speaking of ramping up pressure on the Russians, we've heard today that the Su-35 that appeared to have been shot down near Tokmak has been confirmed today with video footage by drone. The drone was filming the crash site of the Su-35, and we could see that in its final moments, the Su-35 belly flopped into a field near Tokmak, exploding and burning in a roaring flame. We could still see the outline of the aircraft's airframe, of course almost completely burned out, as well as the jet engines near to the back of the Su-35, confirming that this Su-35 is a total loss, and once again, a massive credit should be given to the Russian Air Defense Forces for shooting down their own fighter jet. But moving on from that, we've also heard some incredibly shocking news today that a US government shutdown will be taking effect. And while we usually don't cover this kind of news here on this channel, it has a direct effect on Ukraine. The US government has passed an emergency 45-day spending bill, which allows for the government to continue operations for another 45 days without shutting down due to a lack of funding. However, defense aid for Ukraine has been completely left out of this 45-day emergency spending bill. And this means that for the next 45 days, there will be no way for the United States to provide any support to Ukraine. This is a little bit unfortunate. As many of y'all may know, support for Ukraine in the US government is fairly large and fairly unanimous across the board. But there is a small camp of people who are not in favor of supporting Ukraine, and it appears that they have been able to get their way, at least for 45 days, for support to no longer make it to Ukraine. The Pentagon has already come out and made a statement as well, stating that the funds have run out for Ukraine support, and they are now standing by and waiting for additional funding. This is something that isn't necessarily good for Ukraine, but hopefully will not end up affecting them in the long run. Of course, support not existing for 45 days will not destroy the Ukrainians. We will not see them lose the war in just a mere 45 days due to a lack of support over that time. Hopefully, support can continue once the 45-day spending bill has lapsed, and hopefully the U.S. government can come to an agreement with how funding will continue to proceed for the entirety of the U.S. government, both discretionary and non-discretionary spending. Nevertheless, it is a very serious concern, considering that this is, of course, the first time we have heard the U.S. government cut funding to Ukraine in an official way, and hopefully this will be very short-term instead of long-term, like some people are hoping it will be. By the way, not trying to hit y'all with all of the breaking news today in a single day, but apparently Prigozhin might be alive as a video has come out from Africa showing him in the back of an airplane talking to people and eating food. This video just came out today. We're not entirely sure if it's from before Prigozhin was taken out, but considering that it was released today and everyone seems to be incredibly shocked and have never seen this video before, we are putting it out there that Prigozhin may possibly be alive and in Africa right now. We can see the back of this cargo plane here. And there he is, Yevgeny Prigozhin. I'm gonna be entirely honest with y'all, we don't really know if this is real or not, if this video came out today or if it was filmed months ago and then it was just released right now. This is incredibly shocking though, because no new videos of Prigozhin have come out for nearly 2 months at this point. And for one to come out today, and he is in Africa in this video, it is incredibly bizarre. We have no idea what to make of this. Let us know in the comments below if you think Prigozhin is alive or dead. His death was very convincing, but it appears, at least because of this video, it may have been slightly over-exaggerated just by a little bit. But, gotta say, it's incredibly weird. I don't even know what to make of that, but y'all saw the video, y'all saw what I saw, so take that for what it is. It's just bizarre to see. Everything's happening all on one day. And speaking of everything happening on one day, apparently the Serbians are now building up more military forces along the border of Kosovo. Today we heard that 3 entire brigades, which would be an assumed strength of at least 9,000 Serbian soldiers, are now built up along the entirety of the border that Serbia shares with Kosovo, and they have a decent amount of weaponry with them. They have been deployed to forward operational bases, FOBs, that are located on the east, northeast, and north of Kosovo. And considering that they have built FOBs in the area around the Kosovan border, this is certainly showing us that there is a plan to keep these forces here for a while. We saw a similar plan occur right before the Ukraine war broke out, with around 220,000 Russian forces surrounding Ukraine around all of its borders that it shared with Belarus and Russia, and constructing forward operating bases there, waiting for the eventual orders to attack Ukraine. And it appears that the same thing is going to be happening right now in Serbia. According to information, anti-aircraft systems and heavy artillery has been noted in forward deployed positions, showing that this is an offensive layout meant to eventually support Serbian forces entering Kosovo. Britain has transferred command of the 1st Battalion of the Princess of Wales Royal Regiment to NATO so it can provide support in Kosovo if required, and NATO has also authorized the additional deployment of forces to address the current situation. As NATO is immediately responding to the situation, Kosovan forces have been put on high alert. According to OSINT Defender, the Kosovo security forces have been placed on high alert due to the possibility of military aggression by Serbia against the Republic of Kosovo. We also heard within the last hour that peacekeeping forces from NATO are entering Kosovo. We believe that may actually be the Princess of Wales Regiment that we were just hearing about a moment ago that the British have handed over to NATO command. That may be them that are currently entering Kosovo right now. But nevertheless, it does appear the war is on the horizon, at least at the moment, inside of Serbia, and we may see that an armed conflict breaks out there within the next few days or the next few weeks by this point, especially based off of what we're seeing right now. The situation has been incredibly tense for nearly a year, with a political and diplomatic back and forths being thrown in between the Serbians and the Kosovans, and it appears that it is now starting to boil over as the Serbians seem to be preparing for a declaration of war against the Republic of Kosovo. We'll be waiting and seeing what kind of developments unfold in that area, and if a war does break out, you can expect that this channel will be trying to cover it as much as we possibly can while continuing to cover the war in Ukraine as well. Moving on from that, and also more breaking news, we've heard that now Western weapons such as the Taurus missile will be allowed to be used by Ukraine inside of Russia at Russian targets, on their command. The Bundestag, which is the German parliament, or the German Congress, has said that Ukraine will have the right to attack the territory of occupied Crimea with Taurus missiles. And this was stated by the chairman of the Defense Committee, Marie-Agnes Strack-Zimmermann. And Germany has not officially announced the transfer of Taurus missiles, but once again, this is a very monumentous change. The only missiles that have been allowed to operate within quote-unquote Russian territory, the Russians illegally annexed Crimea in 2014 and therefore consider it their territory, although that's not internationally recognized by anyone but them. The only weapon that we've seen so far that is of Western origin used inside of Crimea is the Storm Shadow missiles, which were used to attack the Black Sea Fleet and also the Black Sea Fleet's headquarters within the city. If the Taurus missile is allowed to be used in Crimea, that is going to be a second Western missile system that is technically able to be used on Russian territory. We haven't seen that any country has given them the ability to fire into the Russian mainland. The United States kind of gave a half-baked answer that they could do whatever they want with their weaponry. They can't tell them what to do. But we have never really seen weapons used against the mainland. We have seen, though, that reluctantly some countries like the United Kingdom, France, and Germany are now allowing for the Ukrainians to fire their missiles into Crimea. And of course, I have to make this quite clear. I do not believe that Crimea is a part of Russia. It is, of course, a part of Ukraine. But the Russians continue to insist that by an annexation in 2014, which was backed up by a very skewed and very off-brand election, well, more so a referendum that was held in Crimea, the Russians claim that they own Crimea. They actually say that that is a part of the Russian Federation and have actually turned it into an oblast or an autonomous republic. I can't really remember the exact terminology. But to the Russians, unlike other areas like the Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson oblasts, which they quote-unquote annexed, but we've never really seen them treat those as official land and territory, they do treat Crimea as an official piece of Russian land. And so the fact that the Germans will be allowing the Taurus to be fired onto it is once again showing that the West is starting to ramp up their responses to the Russians and what the Russians continuously run their mouths about, and are showing them that they're not that afraid of them, especially with British armed forces entering Ukraine as of today. And so with that, that's all of the breaking news that we have over this past 24 hours. It has been one of the craziest 24 hours of the war, probably about as crazy as the Russian coup attempt was by Yevgeny Prigozhin way back early this summer. There are massive things happening all over the world today, and it appears that if things continue the way they have been today, every single news day from here forward is probably going to be an incredibly shocking and riveting news day. If y'all did enjoy this news, make sure to subscribe and be prepared for that kind of news coming out, because we cover this stuff every single day on stream at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every single night except for Monday night. And we also put out short war summaries like this practically every single day that we can. That's almost 7 days a week most of the time, but there are a few exceptions where we cannot put out videos. For example, we are incredibly busy behind the scenes, also trying to take care of law school as well. But still, I thank you all so much once again for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.